June 19, 1953. Electric verdict. The execution of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg stands as one of the most controversial and historically significant events of the Cold War era in the United States. The Rosenbergs were American citizens convicted of conspiracy to commit espionage by passing nuclear secrets to the Soviet Union. Their death marked the first execution of civilians in the United States for espionage and reflected the intense anti-communist sentiment that defined American political culture in the early 1950s. Julius Rosenberg was arrested in July 1950, followed by the arrest of his wife Ethel in August of the same year. The charges stemmed from testimony provided by Ethel's brother, David Greenglass, a machinist at the Los Alamos laboratory in New Mexico during World War II. Greenglass claimed that Julius had recruited him to provide classified information about the design of the atomic bomb, which was then allegedly transmitted to the Soviet Union through Soviet agent Anatoly Yakovlev. Ethel was accused of typing up the notes containing sensitive information, though she was not alleged to have handled classified material herself. The Rosenbergs were tried in March 1951 in a highly publicized trial presided over by Judge Irving Kaufman. They were convicted on March 29, 1951, and subsequently sentenced to death on April 5. The prosecution, led by Irving Sapol and Roy Cohn, argued that the Rosenbergs had committed a crime worse than murder by facilitating the Soviet Union's acquisition of nuclear technology, thereby accelerating the arms race and threatening global security. Defense counsel Emanuel Bloch argued that the evidence was circumstantial and depended heavily on the testimony of co-conspirators with potential motives to shift blame. Throughout their imprisonment, the Rosenbergs maintained their innocence. Their conviction sparked worldwide debate, with critics asserting that their prosecution reflected anti-communist hysteria rather than objective justice. Appeals were filed repeatedly, but all were denied, including appeals to the Supreme Court. President Dwight D. Eisenhower also rejected clemency petitions. Demonstrations against the execution took place in the United States and abroad, including protests in Paris, London, and Rome. The execution was carried out at Sing Sing Prison in Ossining, New York. Julius was executed first, followed by Ethel. Both died in the electric chair. Reports indicated that Ethel required multiple shocks before death was declared. Their death marked a grim milestone in the use of capital punishment for espionage in the United States, and the execution came at a time when the Cold War had intensified public fear of Soviet influence. Later declassified Soviet documents and the release of the Venona project cables in the 1990s confirmed that Julius Rosenberg had indeed been involved in espionage activities for the Soviet Union. The cables identified him under the code name Liberal. However, the extent of Ethel's involvement remains disputed. Some historians argue that the evidence against her was insufficient for a death sentence, and that her arrest was intended to pressure Julius into cooperating with authorities. The case had long-term implications for American society and justice. It highlighted the tensions between national security and civil liberties during the McCarthy era. It also raised questions about the role of testimony from accomplices in securing convictions, especially when such testimony was given in exchange for leniency. Additionally, the execution influenced cultural works, inspiring plays, films, and literature that explored themes of guilt, justice, and political fear. The Rosenberg case remains a subject of scholarly study and public debate. Their sons, Michael and Robert Meeropol, spent decades advocating for re-examination of the trial and sentencing. They acknowledged Julius's involvement in espionage, but maintained that their mother's conviction was unjust and politically motivated. In 2015, several historians and legal experts petitioned the Obama administration to exonerate Ethel Rosenberg posthumously, citing inadequate evidence and prosecutorial misconduct. Although no official action was taken, the debate continues as new historical materials emerge. The execution of Julius and Ethel Rosenberg represents a defining moment in American legal and political history. It embodied the era's deep anxiety about communist espionage and revealed how the pursuit of national security could conflict with principles of justice. The event continues to serve as a case study in the dangers of political influence on the judicial process and the importance of safeguarding due process in times of national crisis.